Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good-smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freaking Muir Pod. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help us move up the charts. And if you don't like it, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, constant listener, you are in for a real treat this week as we venture back into the dark, cold woods of Frozen Head State Park in Tennessee. Yes, that's right. We're going to be talking about the Barkley Marathons one more time. And this time, we're talking to another finisher, Dr. John Fegyveresi. Welcome to the John Freaking Muir Pod. John, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me on.
How did I do with the pronunciation?
It was really close. Yeah, it was good.
Really close. Dang it, I was hoping to nail it. Really close.
It's all good.
All right. Well, hey, we usually go by trail names on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Doc doesn't appear on my paycheck or my driver's license, something I picked up out there on the trail. Do you have any trail experience? And if so, have you picked up a trail name?
Yeah, so I've done quite a few through hikes. I guess I started off with the Appalachian Trail back in 2007. So, wow, 15 years ago now. And when I started that trail, I was going through a transitional period. And I was living in Lakewood, Ohio at the time. And I was hiking the trail and I started off and I was talking to someone. I started May 1st. So I started really late. And I had this grand plan of having this trail name of May Day, because May 1st is May Day. And I'm also a pilot. So I thought it was really funny. But then 2 days later, I met another hiker who was named Mayday. So I decided not to take that name. And just after telling people enough that I was living in Lakewood and I was sort of hiking for my friends, and they just started calling me Lakewood. So there's no funny name. It's not like I jumped in a lake with a big block of wood or something. It's just the town I was living in at the time.
Yeah, sometimes it is just a geographic region that you're from.
Yeah.
I talked to a calendar year triple crowner earlier this year who goes by Kansas Express. He just,
That's awesome.
From that area, just the way it works out. So, all right. So occasionally then, John, I will refer to you as Lakewood tonight.
Awesome. It's been a while since I've heard somebody call me that. So it's refreshing.
Nice. Let's bring it back. Let's feel like we're out on the trail there. So Lakewood, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast at all?
I listened to a couple episodes after you contacted me. Yeah, I don't remember what they were because I have like 27 podcasts that I cycle through. So, yeah.
That's
but
okay.
Otherwise, no.
I like somebody who does their prep work. So nice job there. I only ask because I want to make sure that you are aware of a segment we do towards the end of the episode called the Hiking Hack. And that's where you'll get a chance to share some of your trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. That comes at the end. You have all episode to kind of think about it, let it marinate and give something really good.
Yeah, that sounds good. I do see that. Yeah, cool.
Okay. All right.
Trailblazers Toolkit.
All right. It's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. I love to talk about gear on the podcast, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest adventure gear. And I'm glad that you have some through hiking experience. This will fit right in. So, Lakewood, if you were preparing for your next adventure, and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? You can give me all the specifics on that piece of gear and tell me why you got to have it out there. So this can be any type of item. It could be gear, it could be apparel, it could be a luxury item. So, John, what is your must-bring piece of gear out there?
That's a great one. If you asked me that question, obviously, like way back when, I would have just said like, oh, a single wall shelter or, some kind of shelter. But honestly, it sounds kind of silly, but I think I would say a layer. So I came to love merino wool when I was on the Pacific Crest Trail, and I had this one layer that was like this thin hoodie, And I wore that thing every day, and it was adaptable, and I could put the hood up if it was sunny. It never got stinky. I loved it. So that's like my go-to piece of clothing. And it's just, I wear it every day, and it's great. Sun, cold, doesn't matter. So that's my one piece, I guess.
Nice. Layering is so important out there. I don't know if people realize that, but I mean, you go through all different types of environments, and if you don't have the right layers, it could be uncomfortable.
Yeah, especially on the PCT where it's desert and then Sierras,
That's right. Well, hey, to keep us talking about gear, I have another segment.
Okay.
It's the hiking pole.
The hiking pole, and that's pole spelled P-O-L-L, like a survey, not like the things in your hands out there. I like to explain that to every guest because I think I'm really clever coming up with that, and their reaction
quite the pun.
is pretty much your reaction. Kind of just big deal. So this is a 7-question survey, keeps us talking about gear, but it also allows me to give you a score on the sanity scale from 1 to 100, with 1 being completely insane and 100 being completely sane. And there's an automatic 30-point deduction for anybody who has participated in the Barkley Marathons. So your highest
fair.
possible score is 70. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I think we already have a little bit of insight into your level of sanity, just based on that. Okay.
All right.
You haven't seen these questions before. Any trepidation, any worries right now? You a little anxious?
Perhaps. Yeah.
Okay. These are all hiking related, and we'll find out which side of this issue you fall on. It's always best to give a little bit of an explanation to back up your answer. It helps me calibrate my scoring method.
Okay.
First question. Trekking poles or no trekking poles out there?
Yeah, trekking poles. I like the poles.
Yeah, a little more explanation than that.
Oh, okay. I guess just I obviously I didn't use poles my first year at Barkley, but I like them on a through hike for 2 reasons, I guess. One is because just it saves your knees. You just coming down those big descents. It's just nice to lean on something. It also helps, like, if you start to fall, you can catch yourself, but also because it's entertainment. Sometimes when I'm on those long stretches, I'll just spin the poles, or I'll throw them, or just play with them or something. So perhaps that lowers my score a little.
Lakewood, I have to tell you that this is like episode 253 or 254, something like that. This is season 6. Talked to a lot of people on the podcast. I've asked a lot of hiking pole questions of people, and last night I was talking to a triple crowner by the name of Bop It, and we're going through the hiking pole, and she said entertainment as one of the reasons why
that's great.
She likes trekking poles. And I told her, you are the first person ever to have told me entertainment. I mean, people talk about points of contact, balance, all kinds of other stuff, never ever entertainment. And now within 24 hours, basically, I've now heard the same reference to entertainment from 2 separate people. That's incredible. That's wild.
Sounds like I need to have a chat with Bop It.
Yeah, that's right. You two are from the same camp. All right. Question number 2, what's on your feet? Boots or trail runners?
Yeah, trail runners, definitely. Yeah, I'm not a big, I'll wear boots like if I'm on a deployment or if I'm on my motorcycle or something, but I will not wear boots if I'm hiking. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get trapped into, a lot of first-time hikers get trapped into, well, I'm hiking. I think you're supposed to wear hiking boots. I mean,
yeah.
The term is actually in the name of the item, hiking boots. So that must be what I want to wear. And then, eventually they come to the realization that may not be the best way to go.
I like lightweight, and I like stuff that drains well. So I'm also not really a fan of Gore-Tex because water gets in and then my feet get all like just hot and sticky. I just rather have something light that just drains. So yeah.
Do you have a favorite brand? Are you sponsored by anybody?
No, I've been trying to find a good pair of shoes for a long time. I think when I hiked the PCT, I wore Brooks Cascadias, but now I run in Topos, which I seem to like pretty well. They seem like a good shoe. So a little bit wider of a foot box.
Yeah, I did some time on the High Sierra Trail one summer, and we were going to be hitting the southern half of the JMT, and my feet were just all chewed up because I was wearing boots. I made the mistake. I was wearing boots. This was many years ago. and we're within days of us leaving on the JMT. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing boots. And I ran out to the store and I was looking around, and I didn't have a chance to do any research or anything. And by chance, I picked up a pair of Brooks Cascadia, and they were awesome. Really like them.
They changed a lot recently where they don't like them as much, but they were, I think I wore one pair for over 1,000 miles on the PCT. So
wow,
pretty good shoe. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Question number 3. When it comes to your shelter, you use a tent, a tarp, hammock, bivy, or cowboy camping?
Mostly like a single wall tarp tent, sort of tarp or tarp tent. Although on the PCT, I did cowboy camp a lot. So I light as possible. So I actually carried a 6 Moon Designs, Lunar Solo on the AT. And then I carried a tarp tent Moment on the PCT. And actually I carried it was like a, I don't even remember what it was. It was like a cape, like a poncho that you can pitch into a shelter. And that's what I carried for like the first 1,000 miles on the PCT. So it was really minimal. Didn't keep the bugs out, which was kind of annoying, but yeah, pretty minimal.
Now you get bonus points because you mentioned our sponsor, 6 Moon Designs. So
fantastic
points right there for you. Nice. Way to go.
Yeah, they make good stuff. I like them.
Yeah, they make a poncho that turns into a tent as well, called the Gatewood Cape.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had. Yep.
Okay.
It was the Gatewood Cape. Yep.
All right. Question number 4. When it comes to your sleep system, sleeping bag or quilt?
I still use a bag. Yep. Yeah. I guess I haven't made that transition. I do have sort of a quilt, kind of like a hybrid quilt. That's a 2-person that I'll take with my partner. Like we'll use that together. But when I do like lightweight through hiking type stuff, I bring a Western mountaineering bag. I think it's really light. It's like a pound. So that's my go-to.
Is that down or synthetic?
It's down. So I got to be careful with the moisture, but.
Right. And how do you care for your down products in the off season?
I keep them in like the big bag, and then, I do wash them, but I use that special stuff and put the tennis balls in there and all that good stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, question number 5, very important question. When it comes to food out there, are you a stove guy, cold soak, or stoveless?
I still like hot food, so I do still bring a stove, but I bring like a super minimal one. It kind of just depends on what I grab out of my bin, but I use like a tiny little cat can stove, I think, on one of the trails. And now I've got one of those things. It's basically like a beer can that someone like hollowed out, and you can use it to actually cook your food in. So it's just whatever I can carry, but it's alcohol based. So I use an alcohol stove, like a small little one, and just cook on that.
I was a little nervous there. I wasn't sure how you're going to go. It could be a major point deduction if you say cold soak, because those people are crazy. So I was glad to hear that you're a hot food kind of guy, but then you kind of veered off there to half of a beer can and minimalist type experience. So we'll see how that plays out. All right. Question number 6. What's more? I'm sorry. Is life better above or below the tree line?
Oh, wow. Man, that's a really hard one for me to answer. I really think it's conditional. Like it has to depend on the mood I'm in, because the AT is the long green tunnel, but yet it was very cathartic for me because I grew up on the East Coast, and those are kind of like my woods. But when you go to Colorado and you do like the Colorado Trail or the PCT, and you get above those ridge lines, and you're on those real narrow trails carved into the side, that's like that. You can't really beat that. So I guess if I had to pick, I'd say above the tree line, but it's close.
All right. Now, you made mention of the AT. You've made mention of the PCT.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done the CDT as well? Are you a triple crowner?
I am not a triple crowner. I've done the Colorado Trail, but not the full CT. It's on my list one day. I've done the long trail too. That one was really fun. But I have not done the full CDT. So I'm still got 2 out of 3.
Okay. But you have intention of doing the CDT.
Someday. Yeah. Yeah. Someday I'd like to do it.
It is a rare breed of person who can do 2 of the long trails and just totally disregard the third.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. You either do 1 or 3. That's the thing I always heard on the trail.
Right. That's the rule of thumb. Yes. All right. Question number 7, last question in the hiking poll. What's more important, pack weight or luxury items?
Probably weight. I know that's going to deduct me some points, but I don't really carry too many luxury items. Yeah, I really don't. I mean, maybe I'll carry like some sort of like really small book or something, or like I'll carry like a physical map just because I really love looking at maps, and I know that's extra weight and stuff. But honestly, I don't really carry too much in the way of luxury stuff. So I wait till I get to the towns, and then I go crazy and have all the fun in the town. So
there you go. There's a time and place for fun. There's a time and place for luxury.
Yes.
All right. Lakewood, hiking pole complete. Stand by. I've got to do some math here. You're a doctor. You're college professors. You understand this. I need to run your answers through the John Freaking Rearpod algorithm. Got to do some math. Got to carry the 3. Say I divide by root 5. Going to multiply by pi. And we're going to make a slight adjustment for the wind chill out on loop 5 in the middle of the night, probably about 2 a.m. And I come up with a score of 48.
Okay, right down the middle. I'm at the top of the distribution curve there. That's great. The bell curve.
You're at the top of the insane half.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Well, hey, before we get too far down the trail, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about where you grew up, your background, sports and hobbies, and how you got involved, not only in thru hiking, but what was the pull of the Barkley?
Yeah, a lot of great questions in there. So I grew up in upstate New York. Kind of depends on who you ask what upstate means. Upstate, I mean Rochester, so way upstate, like Western New York. I didn't do too much in school as far as athletics. I ran cross country. That was the only thing I did. And I kind of stopped doing that in high school because I was taking more advanced coursework and stuff. So I ran cross country. That was it. Didn't really do any athletics in college. I only got back into sort of the running and hiking, outdoor stuff in my late 20s after I had been working for a while. And I talked about this a little in the documentary too, but it was really just like a lot of things all came at me at once in my life. I had a lot of personal things going on. I had some malcontent for my job, I guess. I wasn't really happy with what I was doing with my work, and was really felt like I was missing out on my calling of going back to science. And so I had all these things kind of happening at once. And I decided to, have this, I guess I had sort of an existential crisis, and I decided to go hike the AT, and I almost quit. Like I got like 2 weeks into it and almost, gave up. But once I got hooked on it, that was it. And it just became part of my, just part of who I am now. And it's that adventure pull, that tug to the adventure. I just have to keep that fire stoked all the time now. And it doesn't mean I got to do a thru hike every year. It could be something simple, like I do a 4-day trip, moto camping or bicycle camping or something. But so that was kind of how I got into it. And it started with the thru hiking. So, I mean, that's really my passion of motion is thru hiking. And then that kind of shifted back into running when I discovered there was this thing called trail running, which is amazing. Because it combines running with one of my favorite things, trails. So I got into that. And, but then, the Barkley is, it was, I've always been sort of attracted to the events that are a little bit more like grassroots type events. Like my first 100-miler was Vermont 100, which is, you camp in a field at the start line, and it's just like 100 people, and it's like super low key. And I loved that. Whereas like Leadville is like this giant corporate extravaganza now, and it's just not my thing. So I was actually at Leadville, and I was sitting in a hostel chatting with this random person in the hostel, and it turned out to be Matt Mahoney, who is the guy who basically runs the Barkley website, the informal or Barkley website. And he's like, you got to find out about this race. And he started telling me about it. And I said, I feel like I read an article about that race a couple of years ago. And it all clicked because I remembered I was trying to get into the Hard Rock, and I saw that it was a qualifying race for Hard Rock. And I was like, what is this Barkley thing? I've never heard of it. So anyway, talking with Matt at the Leadville hostel, he basically filled me in on how to apply. And then I applied that very year while I was stationed in Antarctica. Like I sent in the application from a remote field camp in West Antarctica. I had to set like a special scheduler on my email to send it at the right time and everything. And I know Laz has like certain people he picks manually, but then the rest, at least 10 years ago. And then he had people that he runs some kind of like random number generator thing. And I don't know why he picked me. I mean, I had a decent resume at the time, but nothing super crazy. I think he just wanted to see like, would his race beat someone that's experienced Antarctica? So I think I maybe had a little bit of an advantage because I was like, hey, I'm sending you my application from a remote field camp. I don't know, maybe. You never tell with the lads.
There's a lot to unpack right there. You just uncovered a lot of material. First thing I want to comment on is, holy smokes, how impressive are you? Not only are you a trail runner, a thru hiker, a Barkley Marathon competitor and finisher, but also you were down stationed at Antarctica. You know, I talked to Anne Marie. I can't remember her last name. Her trail name is Zips. And she's a thru hiker, did the AT, but she is currently stationed down in Antarctica at McMurdo Station.
Yep.
She signed up, volunteered, got picked, and she's a steward down there. And she volunteered to stay on for the winter session as well.
Oh, that's brave.
So she's like one of 150 people down there, and it's like completely dark right now, or soon to be completely dark. And I told her, what a great venue for a horror story. It's just be careful. There's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. But I had no idea that you had been down in Antarctica. So fantastic.
Many times. Yeah. It's been a few years now, but 9 deployments. So I've been down quite a bit now.
Actually, you know what? I take that back. I do think I was aware that you were in Antarctica because you did some prep for the Barkley and your application down there. I see that in my outline. So
yes,
I did know that, but again, just pointing that out that, you know, what a well-rounded resume you have. Now, you talked about the Leadville and it being a corporate race, very different from the Vermont 100. And it just kind of tickled my fancy a little bit. Do we think the Barkley will ever go corporate? And if it does, who would be the sponsors? Who would be the corporate sponsors of the Barkley Marathons?
You know, that's a great, it's becoming a more common conversation around the campfire. I think at Barkley, you know, I was obviously there this year crewing for John Kelly. And, I think I caught the Barkley right as it was starting to change, because 2012, it still had that very like kind of small feel. Like if you read Ed's book, it felt like that. And the only reason it felt a little different was just there happened to be the documentary crew there that year, but it was still only that one crew. And so there were times on that loop or on those loops where I would come up to a book, like say at the tower where spectators are allowed to go. Even if it was in the day, I'd be the only one there. And it was awesome. I'd be like, wow, it's just me and the tower. And like this year, I was there on Loop 5 and there was 200 people at the tower, all like with cameras. And it was like insanity. It was so much different. And so it's really interesting because I was right in that cusp. So I get a little bit of the old and a little bit of the new. And you talk to a lot of the really old guys and some of them are like, I don't like the direction it's going. Some of them are just like, you know, change is inevitable. You talk to all the new guys and they're just like, this is what all races are like. This is what Barkley is. You know, there's social media, there's marketing, there's whatever. And then, you know, and then there's also the people that are like, well, you know, this is Laz's thing. And if this is what he wants to do and he wants to open it up to more press and, you know, it's his choice. This is how he wants to run it. It's his race. So I respect that. You know, I do miss a little bit of that old feel a little bit, but I also had a great time there this year, crewing for John. It is weird though, like to see like there's like a chute now they have to, you know, they finish in and, you know, we're like crewing the runners like at the gate now instead of people going back to their car. It's very different than it was 10 years ago, but not necessarily good or bad. It's just different. And I think if someone were to sponsor, that's a great question. It would have to be something like, you know, maniacal and sadistic or something. Just given his like quirky sense of humor, and you know, it would definitely be a good pun or something. Nothing's coming to mind, but I can imagine something really sassy and.
Yeah, I was thinking something masochistic, sadistic, mental health, some kind of sponsor along those lines would fit right in.
Yes.
Now, I'd asked about how'd you get involved with the thru hiking cult. But really, the Barkley has achieved a cult-like following. I mean, I remember watching the documentary, The Race That Eats Its Young. and just being amazed that something like this existed. And it has, I talk about it every chance I get. Anytime there's a passing, very tangential, far off in the distance reference somewhere in my talk with somebody on the podcast about the Barkley, I'll go into a full-fledged, segment on, what it's all about and how cool it is. And I think it has really picked up steam, like you said, over the years. It's really growing in popularity.
Yeah, there's so many different formats of materials that are coming out. Like there was a new book that came out this year called The Finishers, which was really well put together. And the two guys that wrote it basically went around the country and interviewed all the finishers, and it's just kind of quotes and excerpts from their interviews. Obviously, like there was The Racist Eats Its Young, and then there was the Where Dreams Go to Die, the Gary Robbins documentary. And then there's just been these little one-offs, and it was on the front page of CNN this year, so it's made it to like mainstream media. And it even now, 10 years after the documentary comes out, I'll be sometimes at a random place, like like at a farmer's market or something, and someone will run up to me and be like, "I just watched you on Netflix." And I'm just like, "Oh God, it's so embarrassing." Yeah, it's very rare now. It only happens like once every couple of months, but it still happens. It's weird. It's really strange. So
yeah, I've asked several people in the past decade, have you heard about the Barkleys? And it used to be, no, what are you talking about? And more often now it's like, oh yeah, that's crazy. That is absolutely bonkers. So it's kind of permeating the American culture. And
for sure,
probably larger than American culture. I know it's huge in France too.
Yeah, it's really big in Europe, and I mean, there's been a lot of people from New Zealand, Australia that run it, and it's just it's getting really big, very global. Now,
you crewed for John Kelly this past, is it March or April?
It was in March. It was mid-March. Yep.
Yeah, you crewed in mid-March. I have gotten Jeff Garmeyer, aka Legend. Promised me that when he gets back into the Barkleys, that I will be an honorary crew member for his team. So do you have any tips for me on how to properly crew the Barkley?
Well, I'll say two things. First of all, Laz changed the rules, and so now runners are only allowed one crew member total. So if you
my chances, I think.
So that's the first thing. It means you are the only crew. You are crew chief and crew member, like the whole deal. But also like, I don't mind saying this, but like John can be tough to crew for. I love him, but he's also, he's not very communicative when he's like in his ultra mode. So he just kind of gets like narrow, he just kind of sits there. And I kind of just have to give stuff to him. And it's just because he's so hyper focused. And, so he's hard sometimes to read. Whereas like some of the other guys, like Damien was there this year. He was so like chipper, and it was great. He's quintessential British too. He was like, "Can I have my tea?" It was just awesome. He was such a cool guy. I love that guy. And so, I'd watch him getting crewed by my other friend Jody, and it was just like they were talking to each other, and I felt like a bad crew person because I didn't know what John always needed. But thankfully, like we had a good like plan beforehand. And so I was able to not do anything catastrophic. Like my biggest fear was sending him out with like out his map or without a headlamp or something. And I got food in him. I think a key strategy is to have multiple packs so that when you come in, the other pack, your next pack is already loaded and with everything you need, and I can just put it on you, as opposed to taking your pack off, taking all the garbage out, So he had 2 packs that every loop when he'd come in, I'd restock it so it was ready. And then he also had 5 pairs of shoes, so we would just put it next pair of shoes on each time. So that was really key. And then, like I said, now everybody crews at the gate. So 2 hours before I expected him in, I'd move everything up to the gate. I'd lay it all out, get a stove going, get some hot water in a furnace, and kind of get everything ready so that as soon as he came in, I could cook food, change the clothes, get his new pack on, everything. And, you really got to be like a assembly line now. It's crazy frantic. It's so fast.
Sounds like an indie race. What do they call
it's
that?
It's pit stop. Yeah. It's a pit stop. I mean, it really is. It really is now. And they changed the rules. Like also another thing that was different this year was you used to be allowed to go out on the trails, the public trails at night So I would always go up to the tower after in every loop, in the day loop, the night loop. And, sometimes I'd be the only one up there at night for the runners. And now the park has said no one's allowed on the trails after dark. So when the night loop came, I'd be like, see you in 12 hours, like I'd go to bed because it's like, I don't have anything to do. So,
get a nice night's sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he was like a metronome, like, he almost always came in within like an hour and a half of when I expected him. So he was pretty easy to gauge in that respect. So,
okay. Well, hey, Lakewood, I appreciate that. I feel really prepared now. I can tell Garmeyer that I have had official training as a Barkley crew member. So,
I hope he gets back in. Yeah. I don't know Jeff. I don't know that I've met Jeff, but I certainly know of his exploits. So yeah, I hope he gets in.
He is hilarious. He's currently barnstorming right now. He's got a new documentary out made about his FKT of the Colorado Trail.
Right. I did hear about that. Yeah. And he's got a book or something out too, right?
Really good. Yes. Yep. All right.
Cool.
Hey, before we get to our break, let's talk about how you pay the bills these days. What are you doing to finance your next adventure out there?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a faculty member at Northern Arizona University. I work in it's complicated, but it's the School of Earth and Sustainability. So it's basically our geoscience department. And I teach a bunch of classes in climate science, paleoclimate, geoscience, just kind of that whole spectrum. I direct a program that's meant for students looking to work in sort of the climate solutions sector. So people that want to work in renewable energy or mitigation efforts or greenhouse gas accounting, things like that. But I still also do a chunk of my time as a researcher. So I specifically still research Antarctic ice cores. I've got a small grant with the NSF and some students that I work with directly on research projects. So kind of split that. So I love the teaching. I love working with students. I before this job, I was working at a federal lab on the Vermont-New Hampshire border, and it was all research, and it was great. I liked it, but I didn't get to work with students, and I missed that. So now I'm kind of in the ideal situation, and technically I get the summers off. So I say technically because, you're still expected to work on research and do things over the summer. But if I disappear for 2 weeks, it's not a big deal. So that's how I'm able to do, sort of mini adventures over the summer without having to like take vacation. So it's kind of nice. It's a sweet deal.
Right. Semester or quarter system?
Semester. So actually next week is the last week of the semester. So I'm feeling good. We're almost done with the semester.
You're getting close. And what's your typical class load per semester?
I usually teach 2 classes, but then also usually like a 1 credit seminar. So kind of like 2.5 classes a semester.
And do you have a favorite class you like to teach? Sweet spot.
Yeah. I mean, the researcher scientist in me likes teaching like the paleoclimate class because it's all sort of like the physics of climate science and Earth's climate history and things like that. But the more like student oriented version, like part of me that likes to work with the students, I really like this class. It's called it's a discourse class. So it's topics and discourse, but basically it's project based. So the students will like do the semester long project where they'll work with the city council and Flagstaff to develop a climate action plan, or they'll plant a bunch of trees and do a mitigation effort or something. It's really fun because they're doing real projects and they're working with like real stakeholders. And so it's really fun to see them kind of blossom and work with real companies and industries and nonprofits and things. So. All
right, Professor, in 30 seconds or less, what's going on with the climate? What can we expect?
Yeah, it's not great. The IPCC just actually put out a brand new synthesis report, and it's probably the most stark that they've put out. I mean, it doesn't dance at all. It just says, here's what's happening. We're probably not going to make the 1.5 degree goals as set out in the Paris Accords. Like, the science is absolutely clear. Like, we're past that now. There's absolutely no debate in the scientific community. It's what do we do about it? And what I'm learning and teaching a lot of these classes is how difficult it is to get policy implemented at any level. It's just, there's so much lobbying and it's very difficult. But also how much people think that like I have some sort of agenda. Like, I don't care about politics. I believe the science, and I just want to fix stuff. And I don't care if I get grants funded. I just want people to start working on solutions. And so I've found the most effective way for me when I talk to people that maybe don't agree so much, or a little bit on the other side of the spectrum. I just say, whether you believe it or not, like, things are changing. Let's talk about how we can fix stuff. Like, even if you don't believe the sea levels are rising or climate is warming, crops are definitely failing. So how do we fix that? Sea levels are coming up. So how do we deal with that? Even if you want to call it something else, just try to think about actually fixing the problem. So,
yeah. What is it going to take to see a change in behavior on this planet? I mean, with what's going on, I mean, we've been hearing the cry on this for decades.
Yeah.
And still we're just barreling forward with seemingly not a whole lot of change.
I literally had class today and we had this exact discussion with the students. There are so many facets. There's the transportation sector, there's the industry sector, there's the energy sector, there's power plants, there's, things is totally different. Like, how do we make cities more walkable? How do we build bike infrastructure? All these methods. The bottom line, when you take away all these different policies and methods, is we have to just simply reduce the amount of greenhouse gases we're emitting, or increase the amount of greenhouse gases that we're uptaking, and not just by the oceans. Like, we actually have to figure out a way to take CO2 out of the atmosphere and stop belching it out, because that's the big problem. We're burning fossil fuels 1 million times faster than the earth stores them. So it's running away.
Yeah, and the only thing that helps me get some sleep at night is knowing that there are smart people like you working on this kind of stuff, and hopefully we can come up with some innovation that's gonna help us out. Because evidently, behavior is not gonna change all that much. So.
It's hard to change behavior. I mean, we have a guest lecturer right now on campus giving a seminar, and his profession is he's a professor of climate anxiety. Like, his whole field is he deals with people that are like anxious about climate change. It's getting to that point where people are like really, really getting stressed out about it. It's wild. So,
wow. And, as always, I like to have guests on here that if our listeners listen on a regular basis, they can apply for college credit for everything they learn on the podcast. So thank you for helping to continue that tradition.
Excellent. Yeah.
All right. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from the sponsors, pay some bills. And when we come back, we're going to get down to some very interesting material with what Lakewood's been doing out there with some ultra marathons. Of course, we're going to talk about the Barclays and get some more insight from John. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We are talking to John Fegyveresi.
Fegyveresi. It's all good.
Fegyveresi. That's what I meant to say. Fegyveresi. And we just got a little bit of college credit on from his department at NAU, School of Earth and Sustainability. Thank you very much. But let's talk about some fun stuff now. Let's talk about. I found out that you are currently on a quest to complete 100 ultra marathons.
That is right. And that, as of now, officially, I'm at 97 because I finished the Zion 50K last week. So yeah, and I've got one coming up next week as well. So
you are just rolling down the tracks to 100.
It's, I had no idea. It wasn't like I've been planning this for years. I was bored one night and I was looking through my results that I have my own kind of sheet of results I keep, because there's been some races I've done over the years that are kind of obscure that like don't show up on Ultra Sign Up or whatever. And I just started adding them up. And I got to the end and I realized, I was like, wow, I've got like 96. This is awesome. And then I realized I'm doing these big races this summer. I was like, it would be really cool if I could time it. And so it's been very like serendipitous, because I knew I needed to put some races on my calendar for training anyway. So it's just kind of, I line them up, and assuming I don't sprain an ankle or get COVID or something, I should be good. So.
But you've inspired me now, because I'm looking at the wall right now of my race bibs and medals from various, 5K, 10K, half marathons, and I've got 4 marathons under my belt. I'm definitely not going to do 96 more marathons. I don't think that's possible, But maybe I'll go through and I'll count up the total number of races, and we'll look for an even number. Maybe whatever it takes to get to 50 or 75. 75 is not even, I know, but you know what I mean.
It's a good number though. Yeah.
It's a good number. Good number.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Zion. Excuse me, about the Zion. How'd that go?
It was really good. I ran the 100K version last year, and I just did not have a good day. I was very undertrained, and it was very hot. I do not like running in the hot. I am definitely a cold adapted person. So I had a rough day. And what I realized though is the 50K is kind of all the best parts of the 100K without the bad parts. So I was like, perfect, I'll run the 50K. And so I had a blast. I went up there on very little sleep because I kind of had done a different adventure 2 days prior that we'll just say I didn't get much sleep. And then, so I drove up there 5 hours on little sleep, and then immediately ran for 5.5 hours and then drove home. So it was a very long weekend, but it's a really beautiful course. It really is. The race organizers are kind of interesting because it's like vacation races. It's like meant for it's kind of marketed for people like as like come to Zion as a vacation and then run this 50K. So it definitely attracts a slightly different crowd. But you know what? It gets people off the couch, so I'm all for it. So it's all good. Lakewood,
you're a little cagey there. You're a little cagey about the pre-race activities. I'm intrigued. I wanted to focus on the race, but you're kind of evasive there about what happened before the race.
It wasn't a running thing. It was a different adventure. If you really want, I guess. So I mentioned this earlier, but and I guess we can talk about this later. But I started getting into like adventure riding, like motorcycle riding. So I got like a dual sport bike, and I load it up and I go on these long camping trips on it. Well, there's this tradition, just like in the ultra running world, where it's called the Iron Butt Challenge. And the goal is that you're supposed to ride your motorcycle for 1,000 miles in less than 24 hours. And so I decided to try it. And, my motorcycle is not necessarily like super highway worthy. Top speed is like 65 on it. And so, I had to pick very secondary roads, but man, it was amazing. I did this loop around Arizona that was up on the plateau, through the mountains, through the desert, through, every ecosystem and terrain you can imagine. And it was amazing. I went all the way through Navajo Nation and Monument Valley, and it was awesome. So, it took me 21 hours, and then I slept for like 3 and then got up and then drove to Zion. And yeah, so that's what I was doing. I was being an idiot on a motorcycle.
That's wild. Now, Feggy, we always are on the lookout for a trail name for the episode. Just like I like to incorporate that. I'm always looking for something unique, funny, something that comes up that I can title the episode that. I'm not sure if we can do it with this one because we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. But hearing the words "the Iron Butt Challenge," I mean, yes, that really speaks to me.
Yeah, I like to call it the Grand Ride because it's 1,000 miles. I think that's a little more subtle, but. Yeah. I wrote up a ride report on my journal site if you really want to read about it.
You are a crazy man. That's awesome.
It was fun.
All right. Now, you mentioned earlier that the 50K has all the good qualities of the 100K without necessarily the agony. I feel the same way about like a half marathon as compared to a marathon, right?
Yeah.
And so how did you get into your head? How did it occur to you that, 26.2 is just not far enough? I want to go further than that. I mean, who says that?
I don't know what that switch was. I definitely trained after I got off the AT. I decided to run a marathon. I just want to see if I could do it. And so, I did all the road stuff. Like I did the road training plan. I ran all my runs on roads, and I ran a marathon, and I did okay. It was like 3 hours and something. I don't remember. And it was great. And I did it again, and I did it again. And at some point someone was like, you should try doing this on trails. It's more fun. And that's when I discovered trail running. And after like my third marathon, I saw that there was a 50 miler in Vermont. And I was like, well, I love Vermont. It's like one of my favorite places. And I just want to try it. I want to see what happens. Like, I think I had read somebody's race report and was like, that just seems so far. Like, I can't imagine getting to the end of a marathon and turning around. But then you get out there and it's like you go slower, and there's aid stations, and you hang out. And I really discovered kind of like my people, because I love marathon. The road marathons are great. And I'm the kind of person that likes to mix it up a little. Like I do like some diversity in my runs. Every once in a while, I'll just sign up for a random 10K or something. I don't like doing the same thing all the time. So I do still do a random marathon here and there, but I really just vibed better with sort of the trail running community, especially at these sort of low key races. And so I did Vermont, and then I was like, I wonder what it's like to do a 50 miler and turn around and do 100. And it just, yeah. And so far I haven't had that switch flip for the 200 milers. I know that's like the big thing now. Everybody's doing 200 milers. I don't know. Like I hiked a long trail and that was 200 and something. And I did that as like sort of an FKT attempt. And I was like, I don't really have a desire to do 200 miles, right? At least right now. So
yeah, as we're recording this, the Cocodonut's coming up pretty soon.
It is.
Jeff Garmeyer he's posted that he's running it. So interested to see how that turns out for him. And in previous episodes, I've had on a couple of times these two guys, Kevin Goldberg and he's gonna kill me for forgetting his name. Gabe Peterson and Kevin Goldberg. Yeah. And they fast packed the John Muir Trail in a little over 5 days. And I come to find out the second time I'm interviewing them that Gabe is like among the premier American 200 milers out there. He's kind of cream of the crop. I didn't realize I was talking to a celebrity. I thought he was just some goofy guy.
I recognize that name.
Tried to run the JMT. But just 200 miles. That's almost unfathomable. It's hard to think about.
And the Cocodona, I think isn't it 250? It's even further.
Cocodona,
but it's cool because it ends like the Cocodona ends like 3 miles from my house, and I'm doing the mini version of it. So it actually starts, I think, on Monday, and I'm running the 50K, 55K version that starts on Friday, and the start line is a mile from my house, so I can walk to the start and then finish in downtown and like walk home. So it's just really cool that I can do. And I run those trails like all the time. So it's just like, I'm going out for a long run on a Saturday or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big pains of running a marathon or half marathon, whatever, is usually logistics and getting to the race, getting there in time, parking, getting to the start line. I mean, being able to walk to the start line, how awesome is that?
Yeah, it's great. I love it. So
nice. Now, do you have a favorite ultra that you've run? One that really stands out?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple that when people ask me that question, it's always hard to like, when you're dealing with superlatives, it's like, I don't know. It depends on the situation, but I think, I guess I would say I have 3 that stand out for different reasons. One is obviously the Barkley, because it was just so special. Everything about that, just everything lined up perfectly. And it was just the most amazing experience. It was the most brutal race I've ever done, hands down, the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was just everything about it makes it special. But then the other 2 races I think that stand out are the Hard Rock. It's probably the most beautiful course I've ever run. There's a couple in there that are close, and I obviously haven't done all the high mountain courses. I'm sure the one in Andorra is amazing, and UTMB and Fat Dog and all those amazing ones. But Hard Rock is awesome. I love it. It's beautiful and very difficult. And then also the third one that I like to mention, just because it's so different, is the Spartathlon. I got the very awesome honor and privilege of running that race several years ago. It's really hard. You got to qualify for that, and you got to run fast. I had to run like a sub 10 100K or something like that. I had to run like a 9-hour 100K to qualify for that thing. It was fast. And the cutoff is 36 hours to run 153 miles. So it is hard.
Wow.
You basically have to hit the 100-mile mark in like 20 hours to finish that race. And that's tough. And I finished, that was the year that the Spartathlon had the Mediterranean cyclone. So like the last 20 miles, I was like running through a hurricane. It was insanity. And I finished with like 25 minutes to spare. So I was like, yes. But it's just what makes it so special is the whole country celebrates it. Like thousands of people come out and they cheer you on and they run up to get your autograph. And it's the really strange experience. And like the mayor of Athens takes you out to dinner. I mean, it's just wild. It's such an interesting experience. And you run for your team, your country. So I like had the US shirt on. It was really kind of cool to be a part of the US team. So that was really special as well.
That is awesome. Now, John, explain to our listeners, Do people run the entire ultra marathon? I don't think that's a thing.
It depends on the race. It depends on the race.
Yeah.
I've definitely done 100-milers where I've run 95 miles of it. You walk some of it, but like Spartathlon, I ran every step until probably mile 70, just because you have to keep running. But like something like Hard Rock, you're going to be hiking a ton. So a typical ultra, I usually walk or power hike, like anything that's over a certain incline gradient. I don't know what that is, but you just kind of know it when you're on it. Like, I'm going to hike this. And then as the race goes on, that gradient gets lower and lower. It's like, okay, this is a slight climb. I'm going to hike this.
I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to admit after mile 20 on a marathon, if there's any kind of incline, I'm taking a short walk sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, there's great strategies for it. Like even at Spartathlon, once I got to the 100K part, I was doing like 8-2s where I'd run for 8 minutes, walk for 2, run for 8 minutes, walk for 2. And it's just a great way to space things out and conserve energy. So I'm a big fan of walking, and I walk pretty fast. So I can still do well if I'm like power hiking. It's definitely a strength of mine that I built through all my years of through hiking with the poles. And I just, kind of can crank out really strong miles. A great example of that is I did the one of Laz's races called the Vol State, which is 314 miles across Tennessee on all paved roads. And I got second place in that in the crew division, and I probably walked 75% of it, but I just walked consistently 3.5 miles an hour, and I never slept. So people think, you got to run that to do well. And I got second place by almost hiking the entire thing. So it's just about consistency.
Yeah, well, so. I can't even carry your Cascadias, but you make me feel better about myself hearing that Lakewood has done a little bit of walking out there, so that's good.
Oh yeah, I prefer to walk.
All right, hey, let's shift to the Barkley. So
okay,
we've talked about it a couple of times. There may be a few people who live under a rock who still aren't sure what the Barkley is all about. Can you give us a brief synopsis of what the race encompasses, and also maybe some of the strange traditions associated with the Barkley?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So it's it's in theory it's sort of an underground grassroots race, which has now become much more mainstream. And there's a whole history behind it. The race director put it in these specific woods of Tennessee because it's by a famous prison, which is no longer actually a prison. It's a whiskey distillery. So that's apropos. It's perfect. And that's the prison that James Earl Ray escaped from. And so the story goes that he escaped, and he only made it 5 miles into the woods after 60 hours before the dogs found him. And so, Laz, the director, said, I bet you I could do 100 miles in those woods in 60 hours. And that's kind of the folklore of it. I mean, essentially him and his friend, Carl, just decided, hey, let's do a race in here. It's going to be really difficult. And back in those days, they didn't really maintain the trails. So even the established trails were really rugged. And, it started off as a 25-mile loop, and then it became, can you do a 50-miler? And so in the early days, there wasn't even a 100-miler. It was just, can you do 50, I think it was either 50-mile or 3 loops. And Ed Furtaw was the first person to finish. So he's kind of considered the first finisher, even though at that time the finish was, 60 miles or whatever. He is considered the first finisher. Sorry, Ed, if you're watching, you're definitely the first finisher. But it was just different back then. And then Laz made a joke. The director made a joke a couple years later. It's like, all right, now there's a 100-mile edition. And apparently this one guy came over from UK and didn't know it was a joke. And so he just kept going. And he was like, why isn't anybody continuing? And he finished 5 loops. And by doing that, he proved it was possible. And everyone was like, oh man, this is going to be a 100-miler now. And so,
he probably ticked Laz off that he finished.
It's great. Mark Williams, he's legendary. And the whole point is that it's supposed to be this race that everything is working against you. So there's the physicality of it, is incredibly steep inclines. A lot of it is off trail. So you're just kind of navigating through bushwhacking through hillsides, very steep gradients. So you're on all fours. You got to have really good climbing, just insane amounts of training on climbing. and briars. And so all of the physical parts of it are out to get you. But then there's all these little quirks, like, he doesn't tell you when the race is going to start. He just says it's going to start sometime between now and noon. And you just have to wait for it to start. And he blows this horn, the shell, an hour before the start. And all of a sudden you're just like, well, I got an hour to go to get ready. And he doesn't put out the map until the day before the race. So you have no idea where the course is going to go. He changes the course every year. You have to switch directions every year. And sometimes you go, 2 loops in one direction and then switch. And sometimes you go 1 loop and switch, and you never know which direction it's going to be. The weather is always unpredictable and chaotic that time of year in Tennessee. So there's just so many different variables that make it just really, really, just everything is pushing you to quit. And then you come into that from the loop and it's like so much, there's warm fire and there's food and there's people. You haven't seen people in hours and you're just like, everything is like, just go to your tent. You did 1 loop. You should be proud. It's really hard. I've never in my life, in any race I've done, in my 97 ultras, do you experience the temptation to quit like you do at Barkley. It's just this overwhelming urge to just be like, screw this, I'm out of here, and it's to that point. Like, I've run it 4 times and I've only finished it once. I finished a fun run 1 year. So I did 3 loops 1 year. But in the other 2 years I quit on loop 2. So, it was because of those exact reasons. I was cold or I was upset or I was bonking and I was just like, screw this, I'm going back to camp, and so it's really hard to get over that lump or that hump. You've got to, I always tell people, if you really want to do it, you have to, your whole life has to revolve around it. You have to have every part of your life has to be like focused on finishing Barkley. And you can always tell when you see the people that's true for. Like when I was at camp this year, I had a conversation with Carl Sabe from Belgium. And just by talking to him, I was like, he's going to finish this year. I just knew it. I knew it. But he's also done really well in the past. But I knew he had the fire, and you can just tell. You can tell when people have the fire. So, I was really rooting for Carl. He was my, obviously I was rooting for John, but yeah.
Now, Lakewood, let's make a pact right now. Let's put it out there in the universe. Let's publish it right here on the podcast that you're going to, at some point this year, you're going to do number 97, or you already did number 97. You're going to do number 98. Mm-hmm. And do number 99, and 100 is going to be next year's Barkley. Let's do the 100th ultra marathon as the Barkley for you.
I already got Hard Rock, though.
Apropos.
It would be cool. No, I got Hard Rock though. That's my 100.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing. Like, I was leading up to trying to make Hard Rock 100 be my 100th ultra. So
got it.
I guess, we'll see if I don't finish Hard Rock, maybe.
Okay. Now, for the first time ever, let's have Fegi give us the detailed method for application into the Barkleys.
No.
I know a lot of people listening stood up a little bit straighter. They sat up a little bit straighter in their chair. They got their notepad out for a second, thinking, okay, finally it's going to be revealed.
There's a lot of stuff that people know, like, right. There's definitely stuff that's like very public. Like everyone knows you got to write an essay, things like that. And you got to talk to people but there's always questions about like, what is the essay like? And there was 1 year, I do have, like I said, I have this journal site where I sometimes write race reports and stuff. And there was 1 year I published all of my essays on my site, and they're still there. You can go read my essays if you want. And so, everyone knows that you do at some point have to write an essay. Excuse me. And then everybody knows that, there's definitely like some kind of timing involved. Like there's a certain window that you have to apply in, and there's certain rules about applying. That's basically all I would really want to say. And I get a lot of emails from people asking me like, hey, I really want to do it. And I kind of have my own personal rule. Like I like to help at least one person each year get in. But I know other finishers are like, I don't answer any of them. And I'm just like, oh, come on, you got to pass the torch, man. So I don't know. I always make an effort to try and help 1 or 2 people, each year. But you got to be careful because it's getting to the point now where, I talked to Laz and he said he gets thousands of applicants, thousands. And, he can only let 40 people in. And he's already so far behind because every year there's a wait list, and then, he moves those people up the wait list into the pool. And so like, he's already got more than 40 people on the wait list. So it's like, he's already like selecting for multiple years out. And so it's just gotten to the point where it's like really, really hard to get into, and I feel bad. And that's why another reason I don't want to run it again, because I'm like, if I take a spot, like he has said that, finishers get priority, and that's mostly true. I think if I applied next year, I'd probably get in, but I would feel really guilty if I did, because there's so few spots. Like I can't do that, especially since I haven't finished it in any of the other times I've tried. I've only ever, done that one extra fun run. So I feel like that would be kind of a crappy move on my part to take a spot from somebody.
Well, let me put a different spin on it. Let me assuage your guilt a little bit. Let's apply, get in, and then you can help me. You could bring me along as your crew member. And you could help me achieve a dream that I've had for the last decade.
Perhaps. We'll see.
No commitment. Nice. Let's talk about 2012, the year you finished. You entered 4 times. Mm-hmm. This is the one time you finished, and your time was 59 hours, 41 minutes, and 21 seconds. That's kind of in the pucker zone in terms of cutting it close.
Yep. Yeah. So incidentally, Carl broke my record this year.
I was going to say that was the SKT of the Barkley Marathon until this year.
Oh, it was so exciting. I was standing down the street in the dark waiting for his headlamp, and I saw it coming, and I like turned and I could see the finish, and I was like doing the math in my head, and I was like, he's going to finish with 6 minutes to spare. And he finished with 6 minutes to spare. I was like, yes. So that was very exciting. But yeah, I definitely cut it close. And I mean, the honest truth is I wasn't sure I was going to finish until essentially I made it to the last book. When I was at the last book, you're still off trail, but very quickly after you're back on established trail, and the sun was setting. So it was still light enough out where I could, as soon as I found that trail, I looked down at my watch and I was like, I got an hour and 15 minutes to get in. And I know even when I hike slowly, it takes me just under an hour to get in from here. So I was like, as long as I don't like fall asleep standing up, I should finish with like 15 to 20 minutes to spare. And so I that point, like, it was the first time that I basically was like, okay, I'm going to make it. Unless I twist an ankle or something, so.
And let's talk about sleep deprivation, because I mean, there's very little to no downtime. I mean, you're going for 60 straight hours, and sleep deprivation and having to find your way in the daytime, in the nighttime, this direction, that direction. I mean, that's what makes this race so brutal. I mean, how did sleep deprivation impact that Loop 5?
Yes. So I guess the first thing I would say is that is one of the things that's very different about the race now. 5-10 years ago, you could, in a sense, budget some sleep in. I'm not saying that necessarily the course was easier. I mean, I guess maybe I am saying it was a little easier. People like Jared or Brett could like say, I'm going to sleep for 40 minutes between these 2 loops. That's just not an option anymore. I think in order to finish now, you essentially have to do it without sleeping. I think Aurelian might have slept for like 20 minutes this year, but John didn't sleep at all. And I know Carl didn't sleep at all. So he's kind of eliminated the option for sleep is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Aurelian, as far as we talked about that nap. We talked about that nap and how harrowing an experience of that, of closing your eyes. You got your alarm set, or you took your caffeine pills or whatever.
Yes.
But still, you're closing your eyes in a state of exhaustion.
Yeah.
How easy is it to wake up, 6 hours later?
It's So for me, my personal experience is something was just different. Like, I've done many multi-day adventures and I definitely get tired. Like, I can remember Vol State on one of the nights. I mean, I was falling asleep, like falling asleep walking down the road. And like when I was doing my long trail hike, I literally just like took a dirt nap. Like I fell just like on the side of the trail. I fell asleep, like fully on, like against a tree. So I do get sleep deprived for sure. But for whatever reason at Barkley, I think I was just so focused that I just kept like pushing it away. Like, and only at the very end of Loop 5 did stuff start to manifest. Like I started to see some slight hallucinations, and I was like thinking I was seeing logs, but they were, just shadows. And it was a little scary because it was on the very last climb that I started to see false images. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm on the wrong mountain. And I started to second guess where I was, and I had a full on panic attack. Like, I'm on the last book and I'm going to fail. And, and I just kept going up, and I was like, well, there's nothing else I can do except keep going up and hope I get to the right place where, the trail just tops out at the top. And thankfully I got to the top and I looked, and like, there was the book. So like, and as soon as I got that, like, I woke back up. But, when I finished, I slept for like 15 hours or something. It was like wild. I slept, and you sit in the movie, you can even see it in the documentary. There's like that scene where I'm sitting at the gate and I'm just like, ugh. I have no memory of that at all. None. No memory. I do remember when like Brett and Jared came up and we kind of took that group photo, and I remember eating ice cream in my chair, like after the race. But apparently I took a shower, like I changed, I walked around. I have no memory of any of that. None of it. So
that is wild.
I probably lost a few brain cells that night.
Now, it was 2012. Was that your first year or your second?
It was my first time. Attempt.
Yeah,
I know.
And what was your strategy going into the race? Were you going to spend the first few loops running with folks that had been there before?
Maybe. I mean, I guess, I had studied so many race reports and looked at the map so many times that I'd kind of figured out where the course went. And I was kind of banking on the fact that he wouldn't change it much. And he didn't. He only made one small change that year. So I was like, perfect. I just need to do this first part that's different, because it was also right at the beginning of the loop. And I'll do that. Since it's early, we'll all be, I'll be with the front runners, and I can just do that with them. And then as soon as I know that part, I feel like I should be able to navigate the rest of the loop just based on what I know. And I still got a little off here and there, but like, and then once I did it once, like I just had a really good grasp on like visualizing things. And in many ways, like I did it alone most of the first loop. And in many ways it was good, because I feel like if I was with people and talking, I would have gotten distracted. And I made so many like mental photographs of like, okay, there's an apple tree next to two boulders there, and there's this tree over here. Look for those things when I could, and I just did so much calculus while I was running by myself. And once I did it once, I was like, I just knew it. I knew the loop after that. But I always tell people, honestly, in many ways, your first year is your easiest, because you honestly, even though you don't know the course, you've never seen any of the course, you don't really truly know the hell that you're about to jump into. You don't really know. Like, you think you know, but you don't. But when you go back your second year, and you're like, oh man, am I really doing this again? And it's so much harder to motivate yourself to do it, because you just know, the torment you're about to go through. So the second year I showed up, I was actually more trained. And my first loop, my second year, was the fastest loop I've ever run. It's like 8:30 or something. And, I was primed, but the weather was absolute garbage that year. And I got hypothermia, and I was massive. It was just horrible. So I failed that year for many reasons. But I also, like, once I got behind and I was like a few minutes slower than the previous year, I convinced myself, well, I only had 19 minutes to spare last year, so that's it, I'm out. Even though I definitely could have made up the time, like, I just convinced myself it wasn't worth continuing. And, it's those little things that just, that they turn you off, and that's it. And then you lose the fire.
Yeah. I mean, this is a race that takes world-class athletes and just chews them up and spits them out. I mean, there's only been 17 finishers in 35, 36 years.
Yeah. I guess 17 now. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy. And I talked to Mike Wardian, who
I love Mike.
attempted the Barkley. Talk about a world-class athlete. I mean, that guy is
such a great guy.
Oh my gosh, he is amazing. And he found himself huddled in a cave, fighting hypothermia.
Yes, that's right.
In loop one.
He's I love that dude. He So, but people, I love that. Like, in some ways, I've inspired some people, because they're like, you're the regular guy and you finish. And I think that's really awesome that I like represent, the mid packer. But like, to be fair, like, I did train my butt off for this run. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, because I didn't publish anything. I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell anyone I was running it. But I mean, I think I said this on another podcast. Like, I was in grad school at the time. My partner, like, she was defending her dissertation. She was like, she was already like, I need like 3 months to just like, I can't do anything. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to train for this race. And, I would get up at like before the sun would come up, and I'd go do like 3 hours of hill repeats. And then I'd go into my office, I'd do some research, and then I'd leave and I'd go do like another 4 hours of hill repeats. And then like on the weekend, I would do like back-to-back 12-hour days of like 15,000 feet of gain each day or something. I was just like, my whole life was just, I mean, I basically didn't really get much time on my dissertation, on any of my research. Like, my advisor was very cool, but that's why you ask like, oh, let's go back next year. And it's like thinking about that training and like, how would I do that now that I'm, I have to teach, and it's so hard. I think being a grad student is a perfect way to train because, you get some flexibility in there depending on how lenient your advisor is. I had the sort of flexible schedule to train in that particular year. Yeah. And I just don't know if I'd be able to train adequately. Plus I'm much older now. So
I don't think the people who call you a regular guy, win for the regular, I don't think that's a correct assessment. From what I know, what I've heard, what you've said tonight, and also, you're on race number 98 of your ultras. I'm not sure too many regular people do that.
I think that puts me back on the crazy scale.
That's right. You've lost some points. You're now in the 30s.
Oh, good stuff.
Now, do you still keep in touch with Brett or Jared, the other two finishers that year?
I once in a while I'll chat with Brett. And then I'm still, I would say I'm still friends with Jared. I usually only see him at the race though. We've talked a few times because he's also somebody that's very into like renewable energy. And so I've actually talked to him about his house. He's got this really cool, like, passive heating house, and he's an engineer. So we've talked like as like work colleagues as well, but I do stay in touch pretty regularly with, another group of the finishers. So Travis Wildeboer, who finished in 2013, Andrew Thompson, who finished in 2009, and Jonathan Basham, JB, finished in 2010. The three of those guys every year have a tradition. They run this race in Virginia called the Mountain Masochist. And I think Travis has run it like 24 years in a row now. It's like he started when he was like 19. And so I started running that with them every year. And I think I've done it like 7 times now. And so every November I try to go to Virginia just to like have a bro weekend with the Barkley alums. And David Horton always comes out too. So it's always a group of us that are always there. And, it's not the most like exciting course, but it's just a really cool way to all hang out and have just like 12 hours to just goof off in the woods and have fun conversations and catch up. So I really enjoy that.
All right. Now let's talk about this year's finish. We had 3 finishers, just like the same year that you finished. The only
That's right.
That the race has had 3 finishers, and you were involved with both of them.
I guess so. Yeah. It's funny. I didn't think about
you
that.
are the keystone there. Now, how dramatic was it with Sabe's finish?
It was
a little bit earlier, but I was, like I think thousands of people around the world. I was following Keith Dunn on Twitter. Refresh.
Yeah.
That last loop. I mean, it was bonkers.
It was awesome because, by that point, John had finished. So I kind of was like, my duties were done as a crew person. He was done. He was being taken care of by his family at that point. And so I kind of just like chill. And, that's when I started like checking in on Carl. And I knew when Carl went through the tower because I was up at the tower when he went through, and I did the math. And, you're not allowed to talk to the runners. You can only talk to their crew when they come through. So I told his brother-in-law, I said, listen, just based on what I know, I said, it's going to be really tight, but I think he's going to do it. I said, I think he's going to come in with like 10 to 15 minutes to spare, but as long as he doesn't get lost, he's going to do it, but it's still going to be a nail biter. And so I walked down the street. It was already after dark. I walked down the street to a point where I kind of did the math and said, if I can see his headlamp, I can see the finish. I know that's about 5 minutes in between. So as long as I see his headlamp before 59, 55, I know he'll make it. And I just kept watching. And eventually I saw this little light bobbing, and I looked down and it was like, I think 49 when I saw it. So I was like, he's got 11 minutes to get in. And yeah, and like, I just started hollering up, he's coming, and everyone started freaking out. And meanwhile, I'm like the website I run for, I had been sending out a few like very sparse tweets with pictures. And so like somehow Megan Hicks from I Run Far got my contact information. And so I'm texting her updates, like, hey, he's coming. And so it was like this insider knowledge. It was really funny. But and then she ended up using some of my photos on their article, I think, because she was like, you took pictures right away and we can just use those quickly. I was like, sure, I don't care. I can use them. So yeah, it was really funny. I'm like texting Megan Hicks, I'm texting Maggie Guterl on my other phone, or both at the same time. And it was just really wild. And then he came in and I didn't quite see it, but like I knew he collapsed and it was really dramatic. So and then he did come up to me afterward and he said, I always told people if I was going to finish Barkley, I was going to do it Feggy style. And I was like, well done, brother. So I was like, that's fantastic, because you certainly did. I was like, you took my SKT.
We just arrived at the trail name for the episode, Feggy style. Nice.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, there's only been 17 finishers. What are the lifetime benefits of being one of the 17 finishers of the Barkley Marathon? I mean, do you walk into any bar in Tennessee and get free drinks? I mean, there's got to be something.
I mean, yeah, for a little while, people certainly recognized me. Travis always makes fun of me because, Travis is actually in the movie in brief parts because he finished a fun run that year. And he's like, every once in a while, someone recognizes me from the movie, but he's like, I would hate to be you because you were like the star. And it's like, oh God, Brett and Jared were the stars, But now that's mostly gone. And so the only thing really is, and, honestly, I don't even know if this is really a policy anymore, but for a while it was the one benefit I got is because I'm a finisher. If I applied, there was a pretty good chance I would get in again. I don't know if that was official, but it was kind of like unspoken, I think. But now with 17 finishers, I don't know. Like if that's still like, there's a good chance I could apply next year and not get in. I just don't know. I don't know. And I have no expectation that I will or I would, because I think it's really just up to Laz. I think the people that should get in, honestly, are the people that like got really close and they have it in them, and you're just like, if they just had one more chance, like Carl was on loop 4 last year, and I was like, I hope he gets another chance because I think he can do it. So, but also you never know, like there could be that person that's never applied, just like I was, who's just like doing this crazy training that you don't know about, and they apply and they have a really strong through hiking background and they know how to navigate and they've got good orienteering skills, and they just show up like Aurelian and just bang it out and shock everyone. And it was awesome. Like it was so cool to see him do that well. So
yeah, John, you'd probably apply and Laz would send you a package of an orange soda and a pair of socks and say, sorry, but we're full this year. I can't admit a prior winner anymore.
You bring up a good point though. One of the privileges of being a finisher is it gives me a little more leverage to bust Laz's chops more than a normal person. So I know the one year, like Brett and I showed up, or no, it was the year that I finished. Brett showed up after he'd already finished one year, and we always got to bring something, and finishers have to bring him cigarettes. Like we have to bring him a pack of smokes, and Brett walks up and Laz says, "Where's my smokes, finisher? Come on, this is what you're supposed to bring me." And Brett said, I buried him under a rock halfway around the loop. Go find him. I was like, oh, that's great. I love it. So
zinger for Laz from a finisher.
Yeah. And it's cool because I do feel like, I feel like I have a pretty cool relationship with Laz. Now, I don't talk with him very much, and I usually only see him at Barkley or at like a different event. But, I was very intimidated by him when I first met him, and I feel like now I can just walk up to him and have a cool chat with him. And he's such an intelligent guy, and a lot of people don't realize that. He's really smart, and he's just a really fascinating person to talk with. So,
does he ever do podcasts?
He does. I don't know if he still does, but I know he did a circuit for a while. He was doing a bunch of podcasts. So I know if you search around for it, you'll definitely find some with him on it.
Well, if I drop your name, can I get him to come on this podcast? That's what I'm getting at.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, you could certainly ask him. Yeah. I mean, trying to think if he's done, I mean, he's definitely, I could think of a way you could sort of tie it all together is, he's done transcon walks. He's walked across the country. And he's doing another one coming up. I forget when it starts, but I mean, he walked all the way from the Atlantic Pacific, and I actually walked the first day with him when he was started in Rhode Island. I was there when he dipped his toe in the water. So, that's definitely kind of more in the through hiking world.
Well, there's my in. There's my in. Yeah, I approach him exactly about the Transcon, and then when I get him on, we do a full switch to the Barkley discussion.
The old switcheroo, yeah.
Nice. Hey, Lakewood, do you know where we are?
I don't. Hiking. Oh wait, is it the hikes? There it is. Yeah,
that's right. Hacking hacks. It's time for you to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better, even if they're not running the Barkley. What advice can you give them?
Oh, I'm thinking. I guess I'm thinking about like trying to say something profound without sounding cliche. I do think I've evolved personally quite a bit. I'm definitely a numbers guy. So like I was always obsessed with numbers and mileage per day and all that stuff. And I think there's some fun in that, doing that math in your head. But as cliche as it is, my wisdom is just don't forget why you're out there. It's like I've really shifted in my mentality over the years. I do these 50Ks now, or even these shorter ultras, and it's like I will stop in Zion and stand at the cliff and eat a snack and be like, wow, look at this. People are zipping by me trying to break 6 hours or whatever. And I'm just like, life is short. We got to enjoy this stuff, man. So I don't know. That's everybody's probably can't answer, but there really is so much to say about that. The proverbial roses, all that good stuff. But
I think that's a life skill as well, John. Nobody ever told me when I was a kid. I was always looking forward, and then at some point in my life, I started looking backwards. And it's a rare skill to be able to really enjoy it while it's happening, and in that moment.
It really is. And I can always think about my two big through hikes, because on the AT, I was so focused that I didn't actually start enjoying the trail in its like purest form until I was almost done. Whereas the PCT, I just soaked it in, and everything, I didn't pre-plan all my meals. I didn't ship all my packages. I just kind of did it and took 0 days and just really soaked it in. And it was such a different experience. And, I still do the math in my head and all that stuff, but, like it's the same for anything. Like, I try to branch out my adventures now more and just soak in all the different experiences. I take motorcycle tours. I ride a century ride on my bicycle, or, I do some weird other adventure. And I just try to, I don't know, do as much as I can and experience as much as I can. And, I remember the first time I signed up for a 72-hour 1 mile loop. Everyone was like, are you out of your mind? Like, why would you want to run 1 mile for 72 hours? And it was actually super fun because you just run with the same people for 72 hours and it's like a big family reunion. It's just a great experience.
You're trapped in the moment right there.
Yeah, I guess so. My point is that like you can find enjoyment, like there's special pieces of every experience, it's just like people, they just like, I'll never do that because that sounds horrible. But then you get there and you're like, actually, this is kind of cool and it's just different, So I don't know.
All right. That's great advice. Great advice, not cliche. So there you have it. We are just about done here. And you know what, John, there's so much that has been untapped. We haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about the AT. We haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about the PCT, your motorcycle adventures, your biking adventures, everything else. I need a commitment right now. You need to come back on a later episode this season, and we'll uncover some more stuff about you. How about that?
Yeah, and I guess I could give one little shameless plug. Is that I keep talking about this journal that I have. So over like the last 15, 20 years, I've been like recording all of my adventures. So I finally decided to do something with all that. So I'm putting it together into basically a text collection. Called Treks to Nowhere, because I have this obsession with going places that are like no one else would want to go because it's just so weird and remote, like Antarctica and just weird obscure places. I have such a fascination with that. So I'm putting all this together, and I'm almost done with it. And I even put out, I took a stab at podcasting. I put out some episodes. So if you really want to listen, Treks Nowhere, you can hear about I read some of my chapters. And so, I don't know. It's just, I don't know if it'll be any good, but I'm really proud of it because, I always wanted to put all my adventures together in one place. And I just thought it was really fun to kind of go back through all that and put it together.
Well, sign me up for an advanced copy. We'll have you back on a third episode, and you can read some excerpts. That'll be the entire episode. We'll pick some excerpts and you read them out. That'd be awesome.
It's some pretty weird places I've been, like really goofy, obscure places. So
the weirder, the better.
Excellent.
All right. I hope our listeners enjoyed our time with John. I want to thank you for joining us this week. Lakewood, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media? Where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
I mean, I don't really use Facebook much anymore, but I guess I do have an Instagram, such as Lakewood Hiker, and I still have Twitter, Lakewood Hiker. I guess that's it. And then, that journal site, I still once in a while post on it, which is, I think it's lakewoodhiker.blogspot.com. Who still has blogs? That sounds so 1990s, but yes, I do still post some of my adventures on there as well.
Is there a link to your MySpace page?
I used to have that, it's funny. I used to post my music on there. I played guitar,
Nice. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you have any comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com.
Cool.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, we can't always be on the trail. And when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So, John, I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. This can be a book, movie, documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path. You have any recommendations for us?
You put me on the spot. I mean, I guess I'm reading a book right now. It's right here. I'm just going to pull it out. It's called Atlas of Extinct Countries. I really enjoy this kind of goofy geography stuff where like countries that don't exist anymore or strange border anomalies and weird, goofy, I think Reddit calls it border porn. So I just love that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm reading right now.
You have some esoteric interest there. I like that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm reading right now.
Fantastic.
What have we not asked you?
And before we wrap things up, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What do we miss tonight?
I mean, I guess I kind of touched on that. That was that, that collection I'm putting together, Treks Nowhere. Yeah. And then I don't really have any other than this summer double of the Western States Hard Rock. That's kind of my big thing this year. I don't really know what I've got planned next. I'm thinking about it, trying to decide what I want to do, something big after that. But the Continental Divide Trail is still up there. I'm still thinking about it.
Calling your name.
Yeah, it's definitely tugging at me.
All right, we are finished. Thank you for coming on the podcast, John. We wish you the very best in your future ultras. We hope you'll consider coming back at some point in time and sharing some more epic stories. As we close up today, do you have any shout outs to friends and family?
I guess I don't know who's be listening, but obviously, the Barkley guys, and my old friend Aaron, who got me back into running all those years ago. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. You've made me a different person. And, I guess my partner, Christine, thank you for everything. So.
Don't forget the partner.
Yeah.
That's right. All right. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you're living life fast and loose on Loop 5 for the Barkley. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.
Amen.